As you may know, a feral child is a human child who has lived isolated from human contact from a very young age and has very little experience with human care, loving or social behavior, and of course, human language. As sad as it is, it often happens, although more so in the past than in this day and age. We take a look at 5 kids you won't believe were raised by animals. The Nigerian Chimp Boy. Bello, the Nigerian Chimp Boy, was found in 1996 at the age of about 2. Both mentally and physically disabled, he had probably been abandoned by his parents at the age of about 6 months, a common practice with disabled children among the Fulani, a nomadic people who range great distances over the West African Sahel region. Believed to have been adopted and raised by chimpanzees, Bello was found with a chimpanzee family in the Falgore Forest, 100 miles south of Kano in northern Nigeria. When the story reached the news agencies some 6 years later in 2002, Bello had been living at the Tudun Malachi Tori home in Kano. When first discovered, Bello walked like a chimpanzee, using his legs but dragging his arms on the ground. He would leap about at night in the dormitory, disturbing the other children, smashing and throwing things. 6 years later, Bello was much calmer, but would still leap around in a chimpanzee-like fashion, make chimpanzee-like noises, and slap his cupped hands over his head repeatedly. Bello unfortunately died in 2005. The Wolf Girls of Midnapore. Perhaps one of the best-known and controversial stories of feral children is that of Amala and Kamala. The Wolf Girls were found together in a wolf's den when Amala was about 18 months and Kamala 8 years old. In October 1920, Reverend Joseph Singh, a missionary in charge of an orphanage in northern India, heard of 2 ghostly spirit figures seen accompanying a band of wolves near Midnapore in the Bengal jungle. The local villagers were fearful of these apparitions, but local custom had forbidden them to do any harm to the wolves. Intrigued, Singh built a hide in a treetop overlooking the lair of the wolf pack, an old 10-foot-high termite mound that had become hollowed out with time. As the moon rose, Singh saw the wolves come out one by one. Then, sticking their heads out briefly to sniff the night air before bounding forwards into the clearing, came 2 hunched and horrible human figures. The rest is history. The Andes Goat Boy. The Andes Goat Boy was found in the Andes, Peru in 1990 and was said to have been raised by goats for 8 years. He is supposed to have survived by drinking their milk and eating roots and berries. Being in the wild, he developed the obvious feral characteristics. He tended to walk with all 4 of his limbs. His hands and feet were hardened due to scar formation that acted like hoofs. He could communicate with goats and could not learn human language. After being found, the Andes Goat Boy was investigated by a team at a university in Kansas and named Daniel of all names. The Indian Wolf Boy. Dina Sanichar, one of the boys who lived at the Sikandra orphanage, is usually assumed to have been mentally subnormal. He was removed from a wolf's cave in 1867 when he was about 6 years old. Sanichar was discovered when hunters in the jungles of Bulandshahr were astonished to see a boy follow a wolf into her den, running on all 4s. They smoked out the wolf and her companion and shot the wolf. He initially exhibited all the habits of a wild animal, tearing off clothes and eating food from the ground. He was eventually weaned off raw meat onto cooked, but never did learn to speak. He apparently became addicted to tobacco and unfortunately died in 1895. The Syrian Gazelle Boy. A boy aged around 10 was found in the midst of a herd of gazelles in the Syrian desert and was only caught with the help of an Iraqi army jeep because he could run at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. Although terribly thin, he was said to have been extremely fit and strong with muscles of steel. He was captured and bound hand and foot. The Syrian Gazelle Boy was still alive in 1955 when he made an attempt to escape from whichever unpleasant state institution in which he was incarcerated. The Life magazine story of September 9, 1946 agrees pretty much with other reports. It states that the previous month, a group of hunters found a boy running wild with a herd of gazelles in the Syrian steppes. About 10 to 14 years old at the time of discovery, he was believed to have been abandoned as a baby. He was taken to an asylum for the insane. Sunday Express published the same story but says the boy's running speed was more like 40 miles per hour.